go. Welcome back, Mudflutters. Thank you for joining me today. If you're just tuning in, my name is Baltimore Facts, and this is another installment of Mud City. Nice. Okay. Here we go. So I mentioned at the end of my last video that if we're going to talk about the Baltimore Railroad and its connection to perhaps the removal of the mud and what that could possibly mean for the history of the U.S. and of the timeline of which we put the mud flood in, which most conventional wisdom out there has this thing happening, at the end of the 18th century or thereabouts. So I was going to start with the Carroll family, who owns that little house by the railroad track. And so I started a line going that way, and it kept bringing me back a little bit earlier. And so I don't know if anybody remembers I'm sure people remember the movie. It was a famous movie, but it's older now. The movie War Games with Matthew Broderick. Anyway, so he's trying to get into break the code, the password, so he can play the global thermonuclear war game, right? So he goes to his hacker buddies, and they tell him about backdoors and how he should attack the problem of solving the password. And they tell him to start with this that designer's very first game, Falken's Maze. That's how I would do it. Go right through Falken's Maze. So that's what we're doing. We're doing Falken's Maze of Baltimore, and we're going to see where this thing takes us. I'm going to set a timer here. Let me do that for half an hour, just so I don't go crazy long with it. And because this thing has been so twisty and turny for me that I keep getting caught up in other things. And now I can't find there it is. All right, here we go. We're rolling on my timer now. So I'm going to try to get through. The goal for this installment is to get through to the 1690s, and that's the goal. So here we go. I'm going to try to do that. So, all right, let's start with the timeline, right? So what is Wikipedia here? Again, just gateway information, stuff that's out there. I'm not going too deep. I'm not trying to read every history book in the world. This is just a quick hit. This is the information that's out there that the powers that be, whomever they may be, deem is safe enough. And so I'm going to try to untangle the web that they weave using Wikipedia. Let's see what I can do. So the timeline for Baltimore starts with John Smith, right? And he was the guy that is in Pocahontas. And although I don't know that I ever saw that Disney movie, I'm sure that John Smith is very different than the guy that came exploring around the Chesapeake Bay in 1608. So, just a little basic history about him, right? He was a colonizer, right? And he came and he settled Jamestown. And we're going to get to Jamestown in a second. So, like I said, I'm trying to do like an investigation. So John Smith is here. He's exploring. Who's he working for, right? Who was the colony of Virginia, or who was the Jamestown colony set up for, right? It was the colony of Virginia. So who set up the colony of Virginia? All right. So let's get to let's go to John Smith. All right. Find out a little bit about him. And so. Here they call him an English soldier and and explorer and colonial governor of Jamestown, right? So he was born in 1580. So he was not even 30 years old when this stuff was happening. I'm ashamed at what I was doing at 30, and this guy is doing what he did. So we'll get into a little. I don't want to get into too much. I'm going to get into his early life a little bit because I think it's important, especially once I saw this. The red and the white. That color code is, to me, it's just screaming removal of mud, and follow the red and white is the way I'm looking at it right now. So anyway, he was born at Willoughby, and I wanted to show the castle that's at Willoughby. I don't know the date on that, but I mean, look at it. You know, again, these cathedrals, especially these old stone ones, and I date back much, much further than we're told. And the fact that John Smith comes from a town where there is one, these things are not coincidences. Okay. Um, he claimed descended from the ancient Smith family of Curdley, Lancashire. Right? I wonder what's buried under there, right? What kind of ruse that we know that the nuclear energy is most likely, a fabrication, a scare tactic, or a diversionary tactic away from what the true energy sources are, right? So I wonder what's under there. And he was educated at the King Edward the Sixth Grammar School in Louth, right? He graduated there 1695, so he's 15. All right, 15 years old. I wanted to show that school because kind of. Oh, I think I might have X'd out of that. I'm sorry. There's a picture of the school. It's a great old cathedral. Let's see. Can I get one from here? No, they don't have pictures of it. It's a great old cathedral building. Again, it's something that's been around for. They say. I wish I didn't close that window, but I think I did it just in an effort to keep this thing shorter. So interesting so right out he leaves school in 1595. He's 15, and he leaves home and he serves as a mercenary under Henry IV of France against the Spanish, fighting for Dutch independence. All of this stuff ties in French and Dutch independence, and it gets insane. So he goes on and he fights against the Ottoman Turks, where he wins the favor of the Habsburgs in Hungary, which is, red and white on that shield. Look at that. Habsburgs, red and white, Habsburgs, right? And there's one thing that was interesting here that I thought just made me laugh. So he fought against the Turks, right? And here's Smith is reputed to have killed and beheaded 3 Ottoman challengers in single combat duels, for which he was knighted by the Prince of Transylvania and given a horse and coat of arms. There's no color on that coat of arms. How weird. So I thought that was interesting. Here we got the very first explorer of the Chesapeake Bay and of the Mid-Atlantic region, the Knight of Transylvania. You can't make this stuff up. It's like, or somebody, if you can, somebody did in 1600. And I'm gonna get to some of that too, I hope. So here he is. He's this mercenary guy, well educated from, if not royal stock, definitely, he wasn't a commoner. His family line wasn't a commoner, wasn't a common stock. He was definitely connected guy, no doubt about it. And so here he is. He's doing all of this stuff, and it gets to be 1600 something. He travels back. He returns to England in 1604. Right, and so in 1606 he becomes involved with the Virginia Company of London's plan to colonize Virginia. Now, how does he do that? What is the London Company, right? And so the London Company was a joint stock company set up, and now I'm guessing this is where I never really followed that deep into this line, just because I don't trust anything in our history. And again, this is just an exercise in spitballing speculation, but it's very compelling to me. I didn't really see my journey going this way, at all when I started this, so it's interesting. And I'm sorry, this episode is going to be a lot of background information and a lot of open reading. Not much to look at in this one, I'm sorry, but it's all setting ground for where I want to go, and I think it's important. So here we go. The London Company, also called the Virginia Company of London, established in 1606 by royal charter, by King James. King James, that King James? King James Bible King James? Sure enough, that's the guy. He sets it all up. Now, King James is interesting, in that he unified the crowns of the United Kingdom, the Scottish, the English, and the Irish crowns. I don't know if before him there was ever a unified crown. Again, I'm not going that deep, and he's about as deep as I go. I might touch on a couple people before him. I don't know. But so King James, starts this thing off. He is approached, and so I wanted to go into a little bit about him. Again, I'm not going to go too crazy deep about his life and politics of his reign and things like that. Although there's some evidence, and again, there's maybe if this information really takes off, I'll go deep and do even a much deeper take on this. But they called him the foolish King James, like he was, and he was, I guess, he was pretty well liked and a jovial kind of guy. I guess he was, an interesting king, to say the least. Um, and he ruled Scotland longer than any other king, which is interesting. So I wanted to get to they talk about it here. Just a little bit of background on him, and see, this is what happens to me is I get lost a little bit in all the text. But I wanted to touch on this. So, he takes over the crown of England from Elizabeth, and there's a couple plots against him. One even involving Sir Walter Raleigh. I don't know if he was a part of this gunpowder plot or not. And did I talk about? We'll see how deep I get with him. How this takes me. But one thing I definitely wanted to mention to everyone was this. And it says, and this is where it gets interesting in terms of fabricating the future and how we think about our past today. All right. Under James, the golden age of Elizabethan literature and drama continued, right, with writers such as Shakespeare, John Donne, Ben Jonson, who's the only name on this list I've never heard before, and Sir Francis Bacon. All right, here we go. This is the propaganda machine rolling. Right, and this is Jump Street for the propaganda machine, at least in the English language, right? Because we have William Shakespeare, who, if I'm not mistaken, invented every word in the English language, right? Didn't he? And so much of what we know is shaped from his works, right? And Sir Francis Bacon, that name should go. If you've gotten along this far, then you know that Francis Bacon is skull deep in the Illuminati and all that, however much stock you want to put in that, but he's there, Freemasonry and all of that. And he translated and edited the King James Bible for King James here. And, so I thought that was very interesting that he was the ruler. This is where all the propaganda starts coming out. The stuff that we look to today for an understanding of our past is all coming from King James in that era of the British monarchy, the reign of was he a Tudor? I don't know. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. So I think that's interesting, but also I think it's interesting is that James himself, they say, was a talented scholar and author of works such as the Daemonology, which is a witch hunting manual and about how to distinguish witches, and and actually sets out rules for the trials of witches and things like that. This is the King of England, the unified crown bearer, is writing books about necromancy, divination, black magic, how to root out witches, the proper way to try them. So it's super interesting. There's definitely room to go. I never knew that before, and I guess how is that not common knowledge? So I thought that was pretty interesting aspect of King James. So let's see, was there any, so let's get into his childhood a little bit. He was, I guess, a tutor, right? And um, but here's where the story, especially when it gets to Baltimore, the Catholics, and I'm not going to go into the whole struggle, the the feuding between the Catholics and the Protestants and that history. There's only so far back I can willing to go, but I did want to point out where James was buried in Edinburgh Castle, right? And look at this thing. I was actually in Edinburgh not that long ago. We did go up to the castle, but not in. It was very crowded that day. And just look at Edinburgh here. And I know the work that Rebel does in Glasgow, and there's got to be somebody on the ground in Edinburgh. Look at this. I was amazed when I was over there walking down around here and taking in this view how this castle is just built out of this rock. And that really, it was an amazing view. And Edinburgh was really, especially this area, was really awesome to walk around in. I had no clue about the mud flood at that time. I wasn't paying any attention to that. But yeah, okay, so this is where the guy was born, right? And I guess this is where William Wallace, right, Braveheart, he was allegedly built this. Again, I just can't. Too many tangents will go on forever. And I gotta try to stay on point here. I want to get to the 1690s and then start another episode. Uh, so anyway, I just wanted to point out where he was born, and so he's king. Um, he's granting these charters, and I brought up this map. This is 1650, obviously much later than him, but he's the one starting to grant these charters, and he starts with the Virginia company. All right. Oh, did I lose it? Legacy. Let's just jump right down there, right? So one legacy, and this is going to tie in later. I'm glad I've seen this point here, and I hope the connection gets made later. I came across this Ulster and Baltimore, and there's a connection here with Ulster. But anyway, so it was under James that the plantation of Ulster by English and Scots Protestants began, and the English colonization of North America started. Its course with the foundation of Jamestown, right, which was a charter. Somebody chartered this from, from King James, right? And so the London Company was chartered. So let's find out who chartered the London Company and why. 1607. How much is known about the New World in 1607? I'm sorry. Here we go. Look at this. Wait a minute. Where was it? It was established in 1606 by royal charter from King James, right? And it launches, where do they say? They made landfall in April of 07. So you think they were ready to go? You think this thing was chartered in 1606 in April of 07, 4 months into the year, bang, they're making landfall. So what do we know about the exploration of North America between Columbus and look at that, another new subscriber while I'm making a video. You guys are the best. 78 Hugh, welcome to Mud City, 78 Hugh. Thanks for subscribing, man. And another one. Thanks, guys. This is amazing. Hi, Tammy. Welcome. So, see, you guys throw me off track when you do that. I would say, so we're exploring North America. What do we know? Coach, another great comment from you, I'm sure. Thank you, guys. I got to turn off notifications. How do I do that? I'm so ignorant. Stop! Another subscriber. Tom, welcome, Tom. Oh my God, you guys are killing me. Yeah, we're gonna talk about the Carol soon. I know some of these I've saw this morning. God, why is it updating so late to me? I'm sorry for wasting. I'm gonna have to do this video again because of all of this. No, I'm not. I'm rolling. So anyway, it doesn't say much, right? We got the pre-Columbians. They talk about the Vikings coming, and there's interesting information about Viking settlements being lost and absorbed into um, Native American tribes at the time, and Lewis and Clark, when they do their explorations, they run into fair-haired, blue-eyed uh, Indians. Very interesting story there. That if you should read about. There's a great book out there about the things that they discovered that aren't in the in the mainstream history books. So here we're going through the late 1400s. It's a lot of Spanish, I guess, Portuguese explorers in the New World, right? And they're going around on the Pacific side, and some in Florida. Ponce de Leon, we know about him, right? That great story they fabricated for him, looking for the Fountain of Youth. Yeah, he wasn't looking for the Fountain of Youth. I think he was looking for something else, and I'm about to talk about that in a second. All right, so we go through the 1500s. More Portuguese explorers doing it for Spain. And then we get to there's finally some French guys coming along, right? French guys, 1653, Carter explored the St. Lawrence River. I guess this is up in Quebec, and so the French settlement starting up there in 1534, and then Wikipedia goes silent, goes blank, 1534 to 1609. All right, you can keep scrolling down here. There's nothing more, right? There's nothing about this era. So that's 65, 70 plus years, nothing, right? Are you kidding me? And I'm sure we could go in and we can look up the histories of these French settlements. I don't want to do that. I'm trying to stick with the Baltimore angle because it gets deep with Baltimore, and again the tangled web that is woven, and the rabbit holes that you can get led down. So 1609, we start talking about Henry Hudson, right, and then the Chesapeake Bay and Delaware, and God, I hope I remember to get to Delaware. Or see if this particular takes me there. I tried to do this once before and I totally screwed it up badly. So here we go. Nothing. They say nothing. So then, what intel is going around to make people, want to do a joint stock company to do Virginia when there's, how much information could be out there? So we want to go next to, so who started it? What do these people know that no one else knew in 1606 to start a charter for Chesapeake, or a starter for the New World, the London Company in Virginia, right? And so the charter was granted from the 34th parallel to the 41st parallel, which I'm going to show you is essentially it's the bottom of, it's like Cape Fear here where Jamestown was, all the way to Long Island. All of this is the first. Yeah, go ahead, take it. King James says, "I'll give it to you guys." Who do they give it to? And where's his name? God, I hate the way everything pops up on me. All right, so here we go, the founding, right? So the investors in the Virginia Company hope to profit from the natural resources. Well, how do they know what the natural resources were? How much information could they possibly have had? Who was going around there? So this guy, Captain Bartholomew Gosnold, obtained the charter. It was him. It was his idea, right? This is what Wikipedia is saying. This is, I guess, the general accepted notion. So who is Bartholomew Gosnold? Right? He's got a nifty looking crest of arms, no red and white, but it's there. And so I want to talk about where he was born, right? And when he was born in 1571. Is there a great castle? Look at that. Look at that castle where this guy was born. Okay, you see in the links where all these people were born. where John Smith was born, where King James was born, where this guy was, and stuff. I'm not saying he was born at that cathedral or anything, but that was in the town, right? And he was friends, or his family was friends with Francis Bacon. I mean, are you kidding me? The guy who starts the Virginia Company, you know, connected, connected, right? And he graduated from Jesus College. And let's scroll down so we get a picture of Jesus College, because I really want to show this. And this was, look at Jesus College. Are you kidding me? A U-shaped building with these types of doors and structures. And look how low this is. I don't know if they're, I mean, I'm definitely confident that this goes much deeper. This is definitely it's the same U shape that the West Point building is, and that's so many. There's another guy who went. Hopefully I find it. All right, was it the university? Where's no picture of the University of Cambridge has red and white in it. And so he was friends, and he sailed with Sir Walter Raleigh, which is interesting, right? I mean, there's just a small group of guys, super wealthy, coming from these areas. And then this is Richard Hakluyt. And you want to start talking about the myth makers. How are we going to sell what we're trying to do over there? And this is what I'm getting at, is that so from 1535 to 1609, who knows how many mercenary rogue sailors, explorers were paid to go out there and find out stuff that never made the history books. I mean, these guys were going out, these rich guys wanted to know what was out there. And I think what they were really searching for was evidence of older civilizations covered in the mud, because the real history of Europe is one of being uncovered from the mud. And if the work that the New Earth Channel and Anatoly Fomenko, if that's, I really need to go back and look up his name, but I'm very interested in his concept that they lost 1,000 years, and that 1,000 years of history was just, created from whole cloth to cover stuff up. And I believe that kind of stuff happened. And what were they covering up is the fact that they had to dig everything out from the ground, from under the ground, or most of it. They found the tops of stuff and whatnot. So they sent people out to start finding this stuff, and these rich guys did it, with these connections to, the Freemasons. I'm sure it all goes back to the Knights Templar and all that stuff, because that's the way they want this rabbit hole to go. I'm not going that far back. But Richard, so you're gonna need somebody. You're gonna need works to lay down the cover story already, right? And so we have Richard Hakluyt here. Richard Hakluyt here. Look at all the red and white surrounding this stained glass that they have. He went to Westminster. Do they show a picture of Westminster? No. Again, I'm betting all of these old schools have that sort of ancient sort of mud flood look. And the best part about it is you get to tie those buildings in with these dates that they're providing, in the 1500s, to the cathedrals that we find in the States all over the place, and in Baltimore, and I'm sure other areas of the world. So you have dates that are at least much earlier, 300 plus years earlier than the dates like in America. The cathedrals, the stone cathedrals, have dates of 1880 something, so 300 years. So anyway, I'm not going to spend too much time on him, but I just think it's interesting that he wrote a bunch of works, and he was an investor in the first Virginia, about the discovery of America. And, again, I can only imagine what's in those and the lies that are being propagated to cover what their true intentions are. Interesting, right? So Bartholomew Gosnold here, player, right? And his family. Look at all the people he knew. And this is the group, these were the backers, the investors. But I wanted to get to the next guy, the leader of the Virginia, because these guys went, or some of them went anyway. Bartholomew Gosnold goes to Virginia, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But who was the other guy, right? The leader of the Virginia Company in England. So they're sending somebody out. They needed somebody back at home, right? Was this Sir Thomas Smith, right? Who arranged the 1609 charter, right? So even that's, I guess, maybe the second charter, the second trip that went, But anyway, so he had been governor of the East India Company, right? You want to talk about your conflict of interest charter. He's the red and white. God, look at the red and white flag of the East India. I wonder what they were digging up in East India. Yeah, it was for spices and stuff. Yeah, that's what they were. They were looking for spices over there. So Sir Thomas Smith, um, in the East, he was a governor of the East India Company, right, and founder of and initial investor and in charge of the Virginia, the London Company. So both massive, massive trading companies, allegedly publicly traded. You could buy stocks for. And wouldn't you know, who was exploring North America, 1609, the Dutch East India Company, right? Henry Hudson. Who's Henry Hudson working for? He's working for the same guy that John Smith is working for. You know, two ends of the burning the candle at both ends here going in. And when you look at the area, Hudson came down here instead, and the Hudson. This is the Hudson River here, and what do we know is along the Hudson River? A crap ton of star forts all along. What do we know is at the tip of at the end of the Chesapeake Harbor here, Chesapeake Bay, and the Patapsco River, Locust Point, Whetstone Point, Fort McHenry, and I'm sure there's star forts down along here. So what are they looking for? They're not looking for tobacco, spices, a path to the New World. They're looking for star forts. They're looking for, you know, remains of the older civilization, that they know is out there, because, the secret schools are teaching them all about, being dug up, and the school buildings are old churches, cathedrals, the sound machines, whatever was used then, at least in the paradigm that I'm kind of working with anyway, and and trying to make sense of it from that direction. 1609, Dang it, I only got this far in a half an hour to Henry Hudson. Okay, so I guess that's where we're going to stop, leave them wanting more, right? I know I want to do more right now. So we're going to stop. Look at that. So the Virginia Company is run by the same people who it was opened and sponsored by the same people who do the Dutch East India Company. And, they're sending people over. They got the Virginia Company coming down here, and they send John Smith up to explore this, right? So I wonder how far. Maybe I'll start the next one with where a star fort is around here, because I'm betting there is one. And so we find a star fort in here, right? And then we know that the Hudson River Valley has nothing but star forts on it, or not the River Valley rather, but the Hudson River, along the Hudson River, star forts, right? So coming at it from both ends, the same people, all right? And so I guess that's where I'm going to end this one. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you're enjoying this little trip. It's going to get crazier. I know it is. Again, thanks for watching. If you like this, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave me comments. I love it. So until the next one, cheers, guys.